So we're talking open source sovereignty and global implications of that. And really, we're looking at a landscape that is being shaped by two powerful but often conflicting forces. So on the one hand, you have the open source movement that promises to democratize AI, accelerate innovation, and really distribute its benefits globally. And then on the other hand, you're looking at a powerful drive for AI sovereignty, which kind of gets at this whole techno-nationalism and a more fragmented world as nations really race to control this transformative tech. And so we're going to parse apart that disparity with an amazing lineup here. I'm going to have everybody do a quick self-introduction, and then we're going to get right into it. So kick us off.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jose Plen, and I wear two hats. I'm a founder and CEO of BrightQuery, or BQ as we like to call it. We're a data company, often compared to Dun & Bradstreet, Moody's, S&P, Bloomberg, like that. We track the world economy, over 300 million businesses, over 1 billion people, every legal entity, place of business and such in the world. And the other hat I wear is I'm on the board of directors of the AI Alliance. It's a nonprofit research lab. For those of you not familiar, I strongly suggest you check it out, aialliance.org. And it has multiple objectives, but the primary one is to promote open source technologies, AI, data, and such. It was founded by IBM and Meta, now has over 200 members, and we encourage you all to check it out. Thank you.
Carl Zhao. I also wear two hats. I'm Chief AI Officer for Gape.io. We are a strategic partner of both NVIDIA and DeepSeek, where we basically take state-of-art foundation models and to help companies, enable companies use our tools to leverage their private data to come up with customized language models that tailor to their business. And the other hat I'm wearing is I'm involved in DeepSeek AI, which is an open source ecosystem. I'm consulting for that and especially help companies to come up strategies of how to best leverage open source for their advantage. One correction, I have nothing to do with UPenn. I don't know why John said I'm a UPenn graduate, but I do graduate from Tsinghua University, which is the MIT of China, and Jose is MIT graduate, so we're buddies.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Fan, and I only wear one hat. I'm a co-founder. No hat. So I'm co-founder and CEO of MemVerge. We are a startup focusing in memory. And our latest project is a project called MemMachine. It is an AI long-term memory that is open sourced. It's actually just open source today. And it is meant to providing the right context to the AI models so that their answers can be more accurate and more personalized. We believe this is a key component to enable the agentic AI. So happy to share more with you about that.
Hello, folks. Dinesh Maheshwari. Advise startups, VCs, universities, and governments, different technology dimensions, AI models, new foundations for AI models, AI infrastructure, energy, water, manufacturing. The focus is on using technology to fix some of the problems we have in the world, across the world, not just a few societies. Background, high-performance computing, nuclear fusion, optical communications, RF startups, 10 of them, 3 of them of my own. Looking forward to this discussion.
Okay, so when I think about the state of open source today within AI, it feels like the big tech giants are moving away from it. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg on the latest Meta earnings call was basically walking back, and Llama was really like a big force in terms of looking to open source LLMs. You do have OAI releasing open weights, but that's only like a step in that direction. Like Sam Altman saying that he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of history here. But when you think about leaders, you really turn to DeepSeek. Like in terms of on the world stage, who's really the defining force in open source LLMs. And I was talking to a VC the other day, and he said that's actually a problem that we don't have, a U.S. contender that is really owning open source. So I kind of want to understand why we aren't seeing more players step up to the plate.
Well, definitely, Carl will have to address parts of that question. That's a good one. I'll give you my perspective. So to me, data and AI are two sides of the same coin. And AI models are only as good as the data they've ever trained on. And so, in fact, to help rectify exactly that problem that indeed the United States AI ecosystem seems to have become a little bit more closed, my company, BrightQuery, and our colleagues have an AI Alliance. We're doing everything we can to open source data. And that's often kind of the key ingredient. And in fact, one of the things that we're open sourcing is a huge entity graph of a world economy. So if you want if you want information on a business, on a person, on an address, on a place, on a legal entity, on a security, there is a unique global identifier that you can use without any concern of copyright or proprietary violations that are taking place. So although I cannot speak on behalf of the model builders out there, at least we're trying to do what we can in terms of open sourcing data, which then, of course, can be used to train models and also to make them more factual.
Thank you. Yes, so I think from a foundation model perspective, it is true right now there are more open source models coming from China that really kind of from a leading like benchmark perspective, leading the open source like benchmarks, and the frontier labs from US essentially select a more closed source approach. I guess it's primarily it's a different kind of go-to-market approach, and the US companies try to leverage their sort of first mover advantage and use that as a advantage for the go-to-market. I think for China companies from China, they're trying to leverage open source to get more adoption.
I want to hear from you two on this also, but quick follow-up question. A lot of people are expecting R2 in August. Do you have anything you can share on that front as to when we might expect that?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of anticipation in R2, but there are a lot of smaller incremental releases, like for example, May
2 weeks ago, right?
There's another release just merged the V3.1, basically merged the V3 and R1 together. So those are, less kind of from a marketing perspective, less impactful compared with the original R1 release, but they're all good releases that had in the developer world. There are a lot of impact as well. Now, I think there's an article from from Bloomberg featured about the roadmap from DeepSeek. The main emphasis is really on the enablement of agentic. That's kind of the main focus for the next release. Instead of whether it's R1 or R2, like there are many anticipation on 05, right? But it's not. It's more like you combine the best kind of product features versus a breakthrough in the model.
I have follow-up questions on that Bloomberg article, but we'll come back to it. Dinesh, I'd love to hear from you on this.
Your question, why is no one stepping up to it? There will be. And because it comes down to trust, currently the incentives, especially in markets that are economically driven, that is US and parts of Europe is also ideologically driven on regulation. It makes sense to go vertical and close for them, for the current incentives, but the incentives will change as trust becomes more important. Now, open source, quote unquote, and I want to define that in a moment, is being used strategically by certain geographical areas and also certain corporations, but it is more important than that. And let me be specific. Open source is about trust. And if you have to equate it with Linux, it comes to not just open sourcing weights, it's open sourcing data, it's open sourcing the model architecture, the meta parameters, so that it can be replicated and it can be audited. That's what builds trust. From that perspective, there is no open source model currently in the world.
And you've been working with Grok for 7 years now?
Well, I'm a strategic advisor to Grok now, not involved in the day-to-day business, was CTO there. Grok runs all public source, open weights model. But I'm, by the way, not representing Grok at all. So
You're in the room when they're having a lot of these conversations.
can't comment on that. So at a high level, though, again, coming to open source model, truly open source model, it's something that can be audited, and that is where we should be looking at. I think, with due respect, DeepSeek is half open, half closed. The data is not open. You don't know what's been trained on. The model parameters need to be open still. Looking at some of the problems to be solved, this becomes important. We'll talk more.
Charles?
Okay, so I think there is the model itself, which clearly they are most of the US-based models are closed sourced, and there are DeepSeek, there are Quan, and there are a few other open sources. And my personal view is the distance between these models are getting closer and closer. And I believe the key question to the US frontier labs are the monetization models, and they are continuing to improve the models, and they are also building other components to make their overall service more powerful. And I believe one of such modules is a memory module, as both OpenAI and Anthropic and Google are introducing more sophisticated memory modules that are essentially responsible for remembering things that was not in the internet. Like models are trained on the internet, so every knowledge that's public is captured by the model, remembered by those weights. But what the memory that's belong to us or belong to the corporation are not in the internet. Therefore, it's not captured by those weights. There need to be systems designed to save those data. And those frontier labs are also doing work in this area, but those are also not open sourced. And not only that, they do not support each other's model. So if you are using a particular memory system, you're tied down to that particular model. And what we are open sourcing today is a memory module. We believe the memory needs to belong to the person who owns the memory. And therefore, by open sourcing it, that allows the trust and security that this stays with you no matter which model you use, whether it's open source or closed source model.
Including the training data?
Sorry?
Including the training data?
Yes. In fact, today, the memory models that we opened, we are mostly using models for inferencing. We are actually not modifying the model itself yet. This works in conjunction with the actual model. So with this memory, you can work with Grok, you can work with ChatGPT, you can work with DeepSeek, whichever model you choose.
Okay, so we are going to get to the drive for AI sovereignty, but first I just want one of you to clarify, maybe Carl, maybe Dinesh. I had a conversation with someone, and they said that part of the reason why there's less of an impetus to open source this tech is beyond the fact that like your enterprise customers want a closed system for various reasons, and perhaps that's more lucrative when you think about the B2B segment. There is also a disparity between what we saw in open source software versus open sourcing these foundational models, because unlike an open source software where you can make it better when you open up the ecosystem and people can build upon it, and it kind of makes that original tech something that you can iterate on and enhance it. That doesn't happen with like the LLMs. It's like it's purely you're handing out that tech for free to other people. Now there are arguments why that would still be beneficial to the global ecosystem, but I think about DeepSeek, and I don't know. Is there anything to that? That's two ways of thinking about open source with traditional software versus LLMs.
Yeah, they are different, right? So fundamentally, I think, especially on the foundational model level, I think there is a saying, probably in the whole planet, there are less than 1,000 people really understands what's going on. So that I think not like, right, if you have a Linux, you know the kernel stuff, people can build on top of it. So what makes it difficult is that once that's open source, there need to be some organizations like similar to Red Hat that kind of bridge the gap from people who really understand at the kernel level from the foundation model perspective and the application level. I think Gabe.io is trying to bridge that gap. Then there are more people can kind of use it. And then we're doing that together with NVIDIA as part of their AI diffusion program, where we try to kind of have this global collaboration instead of competition model.
Dinesh, what were you going to say?
I disagree with whoever's told
I
you
know, I
that.
saw the look of like contempt on your face as I was putting this out there, so
It
talk
is,
to me.
so the use of the value of the models is in its use in the applications. And the applications are built on top of the fine-tuned models that are likely also further, quote unquote, customized with RAG or LoRa or context engineering. Having even an open weights model, I don't call it open source model, even an open weights model allows it to be hosted on different infrastructure. It allows people to play with it. It makes, they can choose, quote unquote, the cost of the infrastructure on which you can play, and that allows for improvement along the stack. When it becomes open training data, you can enable use of the models that for applications that require trust. When you open up the model architecture, that further allows you to, quote unquote, do fine tuning that are relevant for that architecture. So there is value all the way through.
Okay, so let's go to this AI sovereignty piece. We're seeing massive investments in these national ecosystems from the US and China. You're seeing it in India, the EU. Is sovereignty a necessary step for national security and resilience, or is this a trap that risks a balkanized splinternet of AI? Who wants to weigh in on this?
Sovereignty today is being touted in the context of AI more for political purposes. And unfortunately, the population is falling for techno-nationalism. Unfortunately, the national pride being defined outside in is too tempting for people, should be inside out. Now, let me answer what you asked, which is sovereignty is about being able to have control on the future of what a society does. To have a control on the future does not, on one's destiny is a better way to phrase it. One needs to be able to deploy AI for the societal benefit in that local context. And that can be served by fine-tuning later, by RAG and the other mechanisms later, as long as there's trust on the base model. The issue right now is the trust in the base model. So I do not believe that sovereignty has to be exercised in a fashion that splits the effort across. Done thoughtfully, there's no reason why we can enable societies, local societies, to have control of their destiny without splitting effort or becoming antagonistic to each other.
And Jose, I want to ask you about Bright Query's US contracts. How do you see governments drawing this line between healthy sovereignty and protectionism? And can you take me inside any of the conversations you're having with the US government?
Sure, yes. So the US administration, as I'm sure many of you are aware, recently put out America's AI Action Plan, which basically spells out the official policy of a government with regards to AI development, AI adoption, and various related initiatives. A key component of that policy is actually open source and the promotion of it, certainly with an America First perspective, but open source indeed. And for those of you who are not aware, what my company does, Bright Query, we are contributing to the building of what's called the National Secure Data Service, which is the first centralized US government data ecosystem that will service the entire population and agencies and the world at large to help inform the general public about the United States and its various constituents. So the way, at least our understanding, and I'm not here speaking on behalf of any U.S. government agency or and such, but just speaking on behalf of BrightQuery as a prime contractor doing this work, is that a key objective here, at least with a U.S. perspective, is to make sure that there is no censoring taking place of information, no bias taking place of information. That is at heart the concern, that no facts be suppressed, no opinions be suppressed in any way, shape, or form. And bias in various forms, or the erasing of historical facts or modifying of historical facts, is something that does take place in some governments and countries around the world, as I'm sure we're all aware. And so the United States is against such a policy. So the American sovereign AI at heart is one of truthfulness and honesty with regards to our history and devoid of any bias.
And Carl, you're helping people to integrate foundation models. So what does that look like at the country level, at the sovereign level, specifically with DeepSeek's tech?
Yeah, I can give you an example. I'm an advisor to Kiefer, who is a company in Greece, and we all know Greek has this rich culture and their language.
Thank you. I'm half Greek.
Okay, and then it's very difficult in terms of from a language perspective, and what's make it compelling for them to do it is just it's so underserved in the generic models, whether open source or closed source. So I think it's there's an article that John and I collaborate on this and to talk about the whole process. And I think what's important for these countries, right, especially from the language perspective, it's important for them to take control of their own destiny using their language, the specific characteristics of their language, their culture, and make sure the model that come out of this exercise can best represent their state of art in terms of the Gen AI.
You know, one part of this narrative is that the push for sovereignty is intensifying the US-China rivalry, creating what many call an AI arms race that, at times might prioritize capability over safety. So we are seeing some of these global efforts like the AI Safety Summits, a call for a CERN for AI. So what I want to move this conversation toward is how can we reconcile these forces? Is it meaningful global cooperation on safety and ethics? Is that possible, or will national imperatives always win out? Like, what are the conversations you're having behind the scenes that people have to say on this?
Question to Carl?
I kind of put it out like.
So maybe. Okay. Oh, okay. So while this is not the field of my expertise, I believe if it's a question of geopolitical forces versus technology trends and human values, which will win out, I think often geopolitical is a powerful force we must recognize and accept in the short term. But I believe over the long term, it is the technology trends and the human values will win out eventually. And I believe when we're talking about the AI, more the transparency. There are openness in many levels. They're open source, open weights, open data, and so on. I think the more open and transparent it is, it allows for ways to going across the geopolitical barriers. And to that extent, that at least from my perspective, we would like to embracing open source as much as we can. So that that allow the transparency to happen, that allow the good thing to shine out eventually.
The cooperation between nation states is one international disaster away. And given that these models can be abused by rogue entities, and for that matter, rogue groups, for that matter, rogue nations, there will be a collaboration on that front. There will be safety. The question is when, and hopefully not too late. The structuring for that does come down to how we create the stack and think about it.
I think that that kind of gets to this other point. You know, proponents argue that open source is essential for transparency and preventing a few tech giants from monopolizing AI. But on the other side of this, opponents, you know, including national security experts, warn of risks from deep fakes and cyber weapons to a lack of accountability. So, and maybe you want to elaborate on this, Dinesh. You're starting to go down this path. Like, how should policymakers and the tech community navigate this dual use dilemma?
It is a dual use problem if it is not open. So the issue here is that the models can be abused for biological weapons, for nuclear weapons, and so on and so forth. But imagine if the training data was open, the model structure was open, but importantly, training data, and it didn't have these to begin with in the data set. It would not be abused. So there is a technology aspect that needs to be done. The open source has to become a viable business approach, and I believe it can be done. The policymakers need to be looking at what their voters, the politicians and the policymakers, would be talking about if they don't address the potential disaster problem. The biggest element here is education of the voters. It is uneducated voters lend themselves to manipulation, whether it's techno-nationalism, whether that is specific approaches on how to combat abuse of AI. This panel hopefully is one step towards, quote unquote, starting that discussion.
I just had one very quick comment about that. I strongly believe that the solution to open source AI and any potential competition that may arise out of that is open data. You know, that to me is key. Data
Agreed.
and knowledge has no borders. That's really a fundamental concept we need to keep in mind. Once knowledge is out there, it's out there. It's very hard to contain unless, of course, you have excessive, censorship taking place. Although frontier AI companies might preserve and contain the underlying models and weights and such that they are putting out and publishing, the counterpoint to that is to open source as much data as possible. And Bright Query and the AI Alliance, we're doing our part to share as much as we can.
All right, we have 15 seconds. He wants to give us our final word, final takeaway for the audience.
This problem is solvable. Trust is important. You don't want to have a black box that you'd be using to do the things to come in forever now.